Boom! Texas Longhorns add a big one. And when I say big, I mean big. Jerry, I know you this is one of your favorites in this class thus far. Vodney Cleveland, a big defensive tackle out of Birmingham, Alabama, Parker High School, 6'2.5", 305, 310. One of the nation's top 100 prospects. 24/7 has him ranked as the number 52 overall prospect in the country and the number 4 ranked prospect in the state of Alabama, for example. This is a commitment that Kenny Baker, the defensive tackle coach at the University of Texas, has got to be really, really excited about. Jerry, tell us about Vodney Cleveland.
Well, he was arguably in the top D-line duo in the country last year. He played alongside Jordan Crawford, who's a freshman at Auburn, who gave me Casey Hampton vibes in high school. You'll see him on this tape. So he played a very, very talented Birmingham Parker team. They were featured on ESPN. He's played well every time. He has been a featured player. Again, like you said, 6'2.5", about 305, 310 pounds. He's around a 600-pound squatter. He's impressive in the weight room. You see that power and that quickness and that explosivity on the tape here. He's a guy, Bobby, I think he can play over the ball. He can play 3. I think he's one of those guys that can do either one. It's similar to Myron Charles in that regard, maybe. Similar frames. Myron may be an inch taller than he is, but I could see some similarities in their frames. But here's the thing for Vodney Cleveland. I mean, this is not one where, he took some visits and the people they visit didn't want him. That's not the case. Florida and Georgia wanted Vodney Cleveland out of Birmingham Parker. Texas beat Florida and Georgia. And coming out of the Florida visit, there was some Florida buzz. But then when he didn't cancel that visit and showed up at Texas, we were like, okay, then Texas is very much real here, because what happened with somebody who visited Florida the same weekend he did? In Jarrell McCoy, they canceled the Texas visit and committed to Florida. So that was the difference right there. Florida tried to get it done, but Vodney Cleveland took the Texas visit despite the push from Florida, and now he's a Texas Longhorn. And I think Kenny Baker did an admirable recruiting job here to get Texas to the point where they were at. Vodney Cleveland also went out and checked out North Carolina as well. But one of the top defensive linemen in the country, and I think a really good get for the Longhorns.
My favorite play out of all of these is when he's a lead blocker on offense, and he literally obliterates 2 people. It'll come up here in a little bit later. 50-plus tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, I believe, on a junior year. Highly productive at that defensive tackle position for Birmingham Parker. Jerry, interestingly, this makes 3 recruits from the state of Alabama for Steve Sarkisian. Justice Finkley back in the day, then KJ Lacey last year out of the Mobile area, but now a little bit more northern part of the state or central part of the state in Birmingham. Texas, just more proof that they are blanketing the entire deep South and not just Georgia or Florida.
Absolutely. And by the way, I want to say this. Those stats that he put up, that wasn't just average stats. Because those are impressive stats when you consider on that defensive line was Smith, a defensive end named Charles Smith, who signed with Auburn, and Jordan Crawford, who signed with Auburn. So you're splitting tackles amongst 3 defensive linemen who are all Caleb Smith, who are all Power 4 SEC defensive linemen. So for people to put those stats in perspective, there you go. He played alongside 2 other Auburn guys on that team. So those guys are all competing for the same ball carrier, let's say. But yeah, I think so. Look, and I think it's also a sign of the times, Bobby. Nick Saban's not the coach at Alabama anymore. You know, think about what we just said. The 3D linemen on Birmingham Parker's team are going to Auburn and Texas. That's a little bit, and that doesn't mean Kalen DeBoer is not going to be successful, but that is a sign of the times in the state of Alabama, right? It was a lot harder to go in and beat Alabama on 3 defensive linemen off the same team. And none of those guys as of today are going to Alabama. And I think Kenny Baker, look, he did a good job there. He went through there to try to recruit Jordan Crawford last year, but Jordan Crawford was locked in with Auburn. So he's been through that school 3-4 times since he's been at Texas. And so he's built up a really good relationship with Vodney Cleveland. And I also think that, look, we had heard this would come down to Florida and Texas. So I think the academic piece was also in play here with both those universities. And I think Texas does a great job of presenting an academic plan for these guys. I know we tie it all to NIL and SEC and NFL, and because those are on for most kids, that's 1, 2, and 3. But then there are some kids that the academic component is very important as well, and you have to be able to present that component in a compelling way. And I think Texas does a really good job of that.
You mentioned all of those factors. We've talked about it before. NIL for these guys is very similar, in large part. Not on every player, but on a guy like this that's so heavily recruited. When Georgia wants you on the defensive line, you're probably pretty good. Florida's had a pretty good run. Defensive line, I tell you what, Texas has had a pretty good run on the defensive line, and I think that's one of the reasons maybe why Vodney Cleveland is so impressed. Texas had 3 guys drafted off the defensive line last year, 2 the year prior. So Texas is starting to become one of those teams that everybody looks to that's going to have the big guys up front, Jerry. Look, what do you think his strengths are? Because I'll tell you from what I saw, I thought it was power at the point of attack.
Yes.
He was violent, or he is violent at the point of attack. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And again, 600-pound squatter, right? I mean, he's got a lot of power in that frame for a young player. And I also want to say this. I should have pointed this out earlier. He was a one-time Alabama commitment. He backed off of that commitment in October. So this is a guy that Alabama wanted inside their own state. But yeah, I think it's power. And look, all these guys get better with their leverage in their hands and learn to be more of a complete player. But this guy has what you can't teach, and that is frame size and natural power with it. I know you like to say the naturally powerful guys playing strength naturally, then the weight room adds to it. I think that's what Vodney Cleveland has.
Yeah, you can't – look, you can get yourself stronger, but it is really hard for young players to eventually grow into powerful people without just some natural God-given gifts.
The jolt is natural. The jolt is natural.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, where they jar you when they hit you.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Hey, Jerry, this adds to Dylan Berryman out of Monroe, Ouachita Parish up in Monroe, Louisiana, as well as Corey Wells out of the northern Mississippi, or excuse me, out of Petal, Mississippi, down near Hattiesburg. This gives Texas 3 defensive linemen. What are your thoughts on this group right now and where there's still possibilities at?
I mean, just think about what you said. We're just moving along I-20 and I-10, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. I mean, that's just defines where Texas is at in the SEC right now. And look, there's some big guys left on the board on the defensive line. Texas is not done. They could take 4 or even 5 if it was the right 5 on the defensive front. And they're in on some big-time guys still on this defensive front. So, I think they got 2 guys who can play over the ball effectively in Vodney Cleveland and in Dylan Berryman in this class. And I think Corey Wells can as well in a different way. But then I think they got 2 guys who can play in the 3, right, and can play multiple gaps. So I like where they're at, and I like who's left on the board. And I think at this point, it's going to be hard to say Texas isn't going to have a tremendous defensive line class. The question is it going to be 4 or is it going to be 5?
Kenny Baker, approval rating pretty high right now, right? Yeah. Given how Alfred Collins came on, how he rotated in and got Vernon Broughton going last year. Now he's doing pretty well recruiting with Josiah Sharma, Myron Charles, Alex January. Looks like he's doing well. Got all those transfers. Kenny Baker may be quietly building his reputation as one of the better recruiters on this staff.
Yeah, and especially considering he's kind of tagged with being the guy in Georgia. He is the lead recruiter, or the guy he may not have the primary recruiter tag next to him, but he's the guy with all the connections of the staff that gets out on the road. So he's not just recruiting his defensive line position, but he's also very key in Georgia. And that is big because Sark wants to have a strong presence in Georgia, which Texas does right now. And so he's doing yeoman's work, and he's doing it well.
I'll tell you something that's striking to me is that Sark's not just been coaching well and developing well from a player perspective and a team perspective. When he's adding coaches, he's adding positive in the recruiting game, whether it's Chris Jackson, Johnny Nansen, now Kenny Baker. We'll see how Mark Orfe, perhaps Kenoda Hudson do as well. But it feels Allen Clark is certainly a part of that. It sure feels like he's got a beat on exactly what he's trying to do. Sark does from that perspective. All right, Vodney Cleveland, 6'2.5", 305, 310 or something like that, Jerry. One of the top 50 or so players in the country, according to some services. Number 4 overall player in the state of Texas. Big commitment any way you slice it. You got to have the big uglies up front if you're going to win football games in the SEC. Texas did a little bit of that today. Before we let you go, I got to say one last thing. Vodney Cleveland, hook 'em, buddy.